And on general, I think if you compare most other cities, particularly in Volusia County, you'll see that those percentages in order, or the actuarially accrued liabilities and the balance of the investments, I think the relationship and the percentages are going to be very much the same in virtually all of the plans.
Okay.
Throughout the county.
Bob?
Alex, thanks for coming and presenting this evening. While we're on the issue of pensions, I know there's been an exchange, there's been some issues with fire pension rollover account that happened, I guess, April 30th, 2010, and I know the city has been back and forth basically with the fire pension plan administrator and the actuaries, and they've sent some responses back concerning their explanation, and I believe somebody from the bank is due to report to the city council. But have you had an opportunity to look at any of those responses that have come back?
Yes, actually I have had. I've been in the email loop. Everybody's kept me informed of everything. And the key thing, just in backing up, so, you know, and we talked about this before, is that because of the dollar amount involved in the plan, looking at it, you know, your staff received a preliminary reconciliation from the actual trustee when this occurred. It's just that when you sit down and go through that reconciliation, there's a lot of assumptions that have been made, and tracing of data is virtually impossible because there's nothing to trace it to. In this case, on April 30, you had a plan that was valued at cost and market, and you had roughly, with the C.S. McKee funds and the roll-up funds, probably 12, I'm not sure, 10, 12 different investment products that rolled forward. And one of them was separate, and the other 10 were all combined in one roll-up statement when it rolled over. So one of the problems that you have is that when you went from National City Bank on April 30 to PNC Bank on May 1, they don't produce statements that say May 1. They produce statements that say April 30, May 31, June 30. They don't show what the balances in the activities were on June 1. Therefore, we have to try to look at that and see if it makes sense. What we had a problem with in the rollover of the sequence, as far as informing you, is that the bulk of the activity involved initially showed a very significant difference, so roughly a $600,000 investment difference from the rollover from one period to the next. We were able to sit down and actually look and see what investments rolled over, what the prices were, what the positions were, and we could eliminate a very large percent of it. And I think we eventually, John, was it 27,000 we actually got it down to, and then we actually passed on it from an audit perspective, saying, hey, it's within our tolerable misstatement, boom, we're going to move on. But in the process of doing that, I don't know how many hours you all have spent dealing with that in the last 2 weeks. But I mean, that's kind of what we went through in the process. We would pick it up and then have to put it down, pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. We would make contacts. Your people did everything possible. I mean, I will say that the responses were very timely. Anytime I asked a question, it was shipped out right away. If it went through the administrator, wherever it went, it was done right away. It went right straight to the banks. The responses that we got back were timely, but again, the issue that we had, and the one that cost us the most concern in looking at it initially, is that no one was really willing to accept responsibility for the rollover, and that was actually in a message that came back to us. Hey, it's not my responsibility. Did not review it. I'm not on the line for it. Whatever. And just because of the disclaimer, that's what caused us concern. Normally we would accept the recommendation, move on, but because of the disclaimer there, that's really the issue that cost us the most heartburn in looking at it. And again, when I looked at the stuff, there were roughly 65 investments in one of the funds that I noticed some position changes in, and again, without having information on each individual item, I think that they made sense what they were, but I couldn't verify them, and that's why we threw that back to PNC to come up with an answer for us. To make it simple, maybe hopefully not too simple, but if you have an investment into a mortgage-backed security and you might have $100,318 or 100,318.615 shares, every time a principal payment is made by the owner of the home that you have that money invested in, just like your mortgage, the balance goes down. Well, when it's reported in the next month's financial statement or the next month's trustee statement, it's stated net of that principal buy down. So we don't have the ability to track that and see actually what the payment was if it was applied properly. And when we look at it, we had roughly 62, 65 investments that we saw position changes on. And our question was just simply, hey, somebody needs to look at that and make sure that that's appropriate and been taken care of. And I believe that since our meeting, since that, it has been done. It's my understanding, the last communication I got, that they had the reconciliation really tuned down. It was under $500, under $300.
Okay. Talk briefly, Alex, about the responsibility of the pension system versus, from the city's standpoint as it relates to the financials.
Well, I hope I'm
About the independent natures of the boards.
The actual, under Chapter 175 of the Florida statutes, the actual pension board is established by statute. It's a separate entity. It's a separate entity from the city. Typically, what we see with other cities that we work with, some actually do them the same way that you do. In other words, they provide all the accounting, keep all the records, and do everything for the plans. And there are other cities that they actually, the trustees do everything. The city doesn't get anything from them except once a year. They may get an audit report. And in that audit report, they take the data, include it within the financial statements, and report on it and move on. So I see it both ways. But typically, what happens is the investment management is the responsibility of the pension board, and basically, all activities there. But you got to understand, it's your responsibility to fund that, and that's why it's included within your financial statements. Is you have the inherent responsibility to keep it up and provide the funding for it, but the management of it is literally designated to that trustee board. Same as with police. 175 and 185 plans are both done that way.
Okay, you good?
Just I want to follow up. So to the best of your knowledge, that discrepancy that existed with the things that you questioned, that issue has been resolved.
To the best of my knowledge, they've resolved it to a very, very minimal difference. Again, we were at $599,000, and we eliminated all of the rollovers with mutual funds. That dropped it down probably $500,000, and then we looked at certain investments that were there. And like I say, from my viewpoint going in, I made enough comparisons and traced it till I could get the difference easily down to around $27,000, $28,000, which was unaccounted for, and I could see that it had to do with roughly 65 investments. And again, from my viewpoint, I could sit and take the time to do it, but as I mentioned, it would probably take, if you don't have the information in the statement, it would probably take you an hour for every investment, and really and truly, it's overkill at that point. The only thing we were trying to point out in the comment was that just make sure when you do this, it was an unusual circumstance for a bank to be bought out, and the trust accounts were cleared by one and rolled over into another one. We just want to make sure that there is a clear exchange of information and exchange of data, and in this case, exchange of investments, and that all that was reported correctly. Because like I said, on the surface, it didn't show that initially.
Thank you. Don?
And